Let's talk about the Nuggets and the Knicks. Everyone else is talking about them today. I might as well too. 2-3 seeds that are down 2-1 in their series with 6 seeds in the Hawks and the Timberwolves. Two very different situations despite looking the exact same, and I'd like to get into that. But first, I just want to comment on the general sense of panic on the airwaves today about the Nuggets and the Knicks. Both sky is falling, these teams are in trouble kind of language. Both teams have apparently lost the series already, despite most predictions from all of these analysts that are talking about how doomed these two teams are. Pretty much all of them predicted these series to be competitive and to go 6 or 7 games. But somehow, after game 3, when they're down 2-1, that spells the end of the series for them. I'm not understanding how that works, but the concept of panicking after a game like this, I know that everybody feels the tendency to do that throughout a series as the pendulum swings back and forth. The kind of coverage where one game they're in the driver's seat, the next game they're in trouble. That sort of back and forth just makes my head spin. And so what I seek to provide here on Basketball Gospel is a more measured take, looking at long-term implications of what we're seeing, particularly with the Denver game. I'd like to start with them. That game 3, Denver just looked shot from the start. They kind of reminded me of Rocky 3 when Mickey dies in the locker room and then Rocky has to go out there to fight Clubber Lang and basically just looks completely lifeless from the start. I wondered if Aaron Gordon missing the game had that kind of effect on the Denver Nuggets, because they just came out completely flat, to the point where I don't even think you can look at anything that happened in that game as indicative of where this Nuggets team actually stands. That's just a throwaway game to me. It wouldn't surprise me if David Adelman after the game was like, we're not even going to talk about this game. You can talk about Jamal Murray struggling, and he absolutely did. I thought he pounded the ball into the floor and was just getting smothered by Jaden McDaniels, and everything looked strained. Same goes for Jokic. Everything he was doing looked strained. I think they were just trying to do everything themselves. Not a lot of other Nuggets touched the ball. There were some concerning things in that game, but like I said, that game, they just looked awful. And I'm going to chalk that up to an aberration rather than something indicative of what's to come at the rest of the series. But also, Minnesota's just a really good team. This is not your typical 6 seed. I said a couple weeks back that I thought that Minnesota was one of the 3 best teams in the West. So everyone knew this was going to be 6 or 7 games. And then let's talk about the Knicks. Also, sky is falling when it comes to them because they lost to the Hawks. This is also going to be a long series. If they go down 3-1, that's a legit panic, because now you have to win 3 straight games. There's no room for error. Just the reality of having no room for error feels more like a panic. Panicking after game 3 is premature. So pump the brakes on the panic for both of these teams. I think both series will likely go 7 games. But this also brings up an excellent point just about panic in general and desperation. Let's just think this through. If they both do go on to lose, these two teams are going to react very differently to that outcome. This idea that wholesale changes would come to both teams if they were to flame out in the first round, that's true for New York, but not for Denver. I said it in my last episode. Denver is a patient, steady organization. They are not an old team. Jokic is 31. Gordon is 30. Murray, I think, is right around there too. I'm pretty sure Jokic at 31 is the oldest core player on the team. And they have some youth on their bench. This is a team that still has some runway. You could argue they look slow and they need to get better on defense. That's all fair. But they also have one of the best offenses in the league. They just happen to be going up against a dominant defensive team in Minnesota. So that's a fair criticism to say that they need to get better defensively. But the idea that they would trade a core player on their team and that would actually represent an upgrade, they don't have picks to trade. They would have to give up depth in order to upgrade. And what were we all saying about the Nuggets after last year? They needed more depth. The starters weren't the problem. They had no bench. They solved that. So I don't know what kind of wholesale changes should be expected in Denver if they lose. They're just going to come back next year. Look, we ran into a tough team in Minnesota. We knew it was going to be competitive with them. It always is. And we happened to lose. Maybe they get a different coach. I doubt that would be the case, but Adelman was elevated on an interim basis. had a good showing and was able to keep his job this year. So it's not the most shocking idea that he would maybe get replaced. But as far as the roster, I challenge anyone to suggest what they could actually do that would make their team better next year immediately. They would take a step back. And with that, let's go to the Knicks, who are going to panic like that if they lose to Atlanta. There are going to be people calling for the heads of Mike Brown and probably Karl Anthony Towns, probably Mikal Bridges. They're going to take the brunt of the criticism, and big moves are going to happen there. And the idea that that's actually going to translate to the Knicks having a better chance at a deep playoff run in the immediate future is laughable to me. You cannot make wholesale changes like that with the expectation that it's going to translate to success immediately, particularly when you don't have a lot of picks to trade. The Knicks gave away a lot to build the team they have. They make the Eastern Conference Finals last season. They lose. They fire their coach, who had progressively gotten them further and further in the playoffs. They arbitrarily decide that's not good enough. We needed to get further. We're going to get rid of Thibodeau. We have people in the organization that don't like him. So we're going to get rid of him with the expectation that Mike Brown is going to come in here and get to the finals. That was a long shot. This putting your team in the pressure cooker and putting everyone's head on the chopping block and you better win or else. I do not believe that that translates to success in the NBA. So this talk around Denver and the Knicks is funny to me because if they both do in fact lose, you can forget all the panic talk about Denver. They're going to lick their wounds and come back next year. They'll make a little bit of adjustments. They'll get better defensively. If anything, we'll see a coaching change. But the core of that roster is coming back the same. When it comes to the Knicks, everything is on the table because they've already signaled their desperation in the way that they fired Tom Thibodeau. And they fired him expecting to get to the finals. They're the ones who set that goalpost. When you set expectations like that, it doesn't actually make you more likely to meet them.